Things do not do in Sweden. Don't ignore the line culture. Swedes love their line etiquette and passionately adhere to it, even when there is no obvious line. Whether it's at the bus or the ferry, travelers should use caution not to jump any lines and flout the line culture of Sweden. Don't assume all Swedes speak English. English might be a universal language, but don't expect to hear your mother tongue in most parts of Europe. In fact, you can only be guaranteed to hear English in the UK and Ireland, but it is certainly not the predominant language in Sweden. This is not to say that Swedes cannot speak English, but keep in mind that it is not their first language. Whatever you do, when you encounter a non-native English speaker in Sweden, do not raise your voice and speak more slowly to them, as if they were raised in the back of a chicken coop. Learn a few basic Swedish phrases instead. Don't wear shoes inside a Swedish home. For travelers fortunate enough to be invited into a Swedish home, it's important to remove shoes first. There is usually a place to put shoes near the door, and often hosts will have slippers available for guests to use. Don't ignore personal space. Swedes love their personal space. They are not touchy-feely by nature. In fact, don't even stand too close at the cash register in a shop. Don't sit next to someone on a bus if there is an open seat for you elsewhere. Think about it, if a complete stranger sits next to you in an empty bus, wouldn't you too feel uncomfortable or perhaps cling onto your handbag for dear life and look for the nearest escape route? This is similar to American culture, so act pretty much as you would at home in this regard. Don't pronounce IKEA incorrectly. It's pronounced IKEA, not IKEA as we say in the States. It's nowhere near as popular in Sweden as it is in the United States, but you can visit one if you wish. Don't educate the Swedes. This kind of behavior can come across as extremely arrogant, whether you mean to be or not. Don't assume that because Sweden is a neutral entity, Swedes are uninformed about the political complexities that go on in other countries. You will actually find the Swedes read a lot and take their education pretty seriously even from a young age. This is not to say that you cannot indulge them with interesting snippets about your homeland, but don't be confrontational or look like a foreign know-it-all. Don't feel pressured by silence. What you may perceive as an awkward silence, a Swede will perceive as a comfortable pause. Don't say what you mean what you say aptly describes the way of a Swedish conversation. Swedes are direct communicators, and every word is calculated to carry meaning across. You will hardly ever overhear conversations that are filled with social pleasantries and small talk, so don't rush to fill the gap, simply because you are used to keeping up constant chatter back home. Don't expect a cheap vacation in Sweden. Unless you are coming from Norway, don't expect low prices in Sweden. Drinking, eating, and accommodation in Sweden are all quite expensive. A good way to balance out the expense of vacation in Sweden is to also visit the Baltic countries, which are relatively affordable.